Greetings and welcome back. We are in sophomore English, and our objective today is to at least begin by looking at the Billy Collins offerings Christmas Sparrow on page 716. Let's go there now, and let's pay particular attention to what's being said that's not actually said, okay? So we can maybe say it that way. What is it that's being alluded to, we might say, or referenced in some way, all right? We'll begin first of all with a reading and then a bit of exegesis, okay?
Excuse me, I'm working with a bit of cold.
Christmas Sparrow. The first thing I heard this morning was a rapid flapping sound, soft, insistent. Wings against glasses, it turned out, downstairs when I saw the small bird rioting in the frame of a high window, trying to hurl itself through the enigma of glass into the spacious light. Then, a noise in the throat of the cat, who was hunkering on the rug, told me how the bird had gotten inside, carried in the cold night through a flap of a basement door, and later released from the soft grip of teeth. On a chair, I trapped its pulsations in a shirt, got it to the door so weightless it seemed to have vanished into the nest of cloth. But outside, when I had cut my hands, it burst into its element, dipping over the dormant garden in a spasm of wing beats that disappeared over a row of tall hemlocks. For the rest of the day, I could feel its wild thrumming against my palms as I wondered about the hours it must have spent pent in the shadows of that room, hidden in the spiky branches of our decorated tree, breathing there among the metallic angels, ceramic apples, stars of yarn, its eyes open like mine as I lie in bed tonight, picturing this rare, lucky sparrow tucked into a holly bush now, a light snow tumbling through the windless dark. Now, let's exegete for a moment here, but I want to begin by pointing out that this poem has some interesting movements of time. Jot down in your notes real quickly what you see as being kind of intriguing about the way this poem tells about time. We began in what time of the day, we end in what time of the day. You see what I'm asking? Those kinds of questions. As we said about the bishop offering yesterday, the fish, a lot of times poets, several of us are now professionals, a lot of times poets will begin with the most simple of representations. And then from those kinds of experiences will derive some kind of message. In other words, instead of telling us, they show us something profound, okay? And Christmas Sparrow is a classic example of this. Let's begin by, first of all, pointing out this issue of time. Notice we began in what time? Review.
Already running down there and I didn't know.
We're done. Right? You guys are all done, correct?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Notice the first thing I heard this morning was rapid flapping, soft, insistent wings against glass, as it turned out, downstairs, when I saw the small bird rioting in the frame of a high window, trying to hurl itself through the enigma of glass into the spacious light. A number of years ago, my windows remain open for much of the semester anyway. A bird got into this room, and it was pretty brutal to watch this bird over and over again try and fly out through that window, right? So you kind of get a sense of this. The bird is stuck inside, trying to get out over and over again, right? It's a simple picture for us. Then a noise in the throat of the cat. Uh-oh, what does that little stanza tell you about how the bird actually got into the room? Do you got any sense of it?
The cat.
Yeah, in other words, we're winter time. What time of the year? Not just winter, but what? How do you know it's Christmas? Right, at the end of the story, we're told that, end of the poem, we're told that there's a Christmas tree in the living room of the house, right? And so the poor bird got stuck in the mouth of a cat, B, brought inside of the house, then escapes to try to get out, right? What are we going to say about this poor sparrow? What kind of day has it had?
Bad.
Yeah, not so good, right? Not so good. And carried into the cold night. On a chair, finally, I trapped its pulsations in a shirt and got it to the door so weightless it seemed to have vanished into the nest of cloth. But outside, right, when I uncupped my hands, it burst into its element. Jot down in your notes what that means. It burst into its element. I don't understand. Somebody want to help me out with what that means? It burst into its element means what? Like the bird has been flying inside, back and forth, somewhat trapped. Once it gets outside, what does it mean to say it's back in its element? So you have inside where it doesn't fit, outside where it belongs, and the minute that it goes back outside, wham, it's back into its natural element again, right? Dipping over the dormant garden in a spasm of wing beats, then disappeared over a row of tall hemlocks. For the rest of the day, now the poet is kind of remembering this experience, for the rest of the day I could feel its wild thrumming against my palms as I wondered about the hours it must have pent in the shadows of that room. What is it that the poet speaker finds interesting about those hours that the bird must have flown around the living room? He imagines it stuck in a Christmas tree branches, trying to do what?
Escape.
Keep going. What do you imagine it is that he must have thought? Ah, a Christmas tree. Yes, I'm back in my element again. But notice he says, sitting in the decorated tree, breathing there among the metallic angels. What's the point that he's trying to make about how this bird must have felt so unbelievably foreign? Why foreign? Totally a strange place, right? There you are in the tree, but you've got these things surrounding you that make you feel like you're totally out of place. In the same way he says, I find myself thinking about this, he imagines the eyes of the bird wide open, right? Like, whoa, what is going on? And then all of a sudden at the end of the poem, the poet, much like Bishop in her poem The Fish, a 3A observation, yes, begins to somehow identify with the bird. Notice, like mine, eyes, like mine, as I lie in bed tonight, picturing this rare, lucky, why lucky sparrow?
Because it wasn't killed by
Right, he had somehow found a way to escape, right? Tucked into a holly bush now, a light snow tumbling through the windless dark. How does the poem end? In what ways does he kind of identify with this bird? This Christmas sparrow.
Being foreign and then...
Yes, the whole notion of where you fit in, huh? Where do you fit in? A 3B question. Do you think it's true that sometimes high school students are kind of like this Christmas sparrow when they are in high school? In what way? Jot down how might high school students sometimes be like this poor bird. In other words, somewhat a little bit out of their element. High school is not for everyone, is it? In what ways is sometimes high school not the place where a student wakes up in the morning and goes, yay, I get to go back to high school? And now I'm not saying that not all of us at some point, kind of struggle with, not another day, right? But there are some students who just really struggle with a place like high school. How come? Why don't they fit in so well? What is it that keeps them from fitting in so well?
Differences?
In what way differences?
They might like something other people...
Their interests don't verge or converge with other students. Good, keep going. What makes high school so really difficult for some students, do you think? And these are usually students that aren't very successful. They find ways to kind of self-sabotage and then ultimately drop out and leave.
authority.
They don't like authority. In what way they don't like authority?
I don't think it applies to them.
Yeah, they don't like being told what to do, often by idiots. It's interesting the number of really bright kids who drop out of high school. One of the things they will often say is, why would I want to let some idiot who's dumber than me tell me what to do? Whoa. Issues with authority. Good, keep going. What about the students that don't physically want to be here because they look outside the window and they'd much rather be outside, maybe even working? How about those students? They're like, dude, why do I need to go to high school? So you can get a job. Dude, I can get a job right now. I don't need to get a degree to get a job. I don't have to graduate from high school. It's a silly waste of time anyway. I can go get a job right now. I don't need to be in. Besides, why would you want to be cooped up inside of a building all day? I could be outside doing something. What are some other reasons? I ask this question to especially honor students because it's sometimes completely foreign to them that there would actually be a student who could imagine at all wanting to be outside of school doing something other than academics. Right? A lot of the students that are like this, they could care less about sports. All of that foolishness and activities, all that foolishness about balls, games, and swimming and forensic stuff and all, they look at it all as completely asinine. Really? Are you serious? That is not fun to me at all. I mean, if you take away all the extracurriculars of school, all of it, right? You don't want to do any of it. All that's left is coming to the building, going to the classroom, hearing some teacher drone on all day, and think about how much time you're stuck here, right? If you don't have much for social friends, your hour of lunch is not a social outing at all. It's just more time to sit and be reminded of how you'd like to be somewhere else. What would you say to a student like that? Ms. Kennedy, what would you say to a student like that? Does that make you sad to think that they're...
I don't know. I tell them to, go try something.
You need to get involved.
Yeah.
And the student might say back what?
No.
I don't want to.
I don't want to get involved. Involved in what?
Something.
A, B, C, D. Yeah, but I hate all those things.
Have you tried them?
Oh, I haven't tried maybe. Maybe I don't want to try. I don't feel like trying. To me, the whole project's silly. What would you say to students like this? Can you at all
Good luck.
resonate? You see it as kind of like sad. Sad. Like, so of course I ask this question sometimes and some students will say, yeah, I kind of know students like that. And they ironically, they don't think of themselves as sad. They think of all the other ones as sad. Like, you poor, benighted, it's really, you honestly think this kind of silliness matters? None of this matters. It's all kind of a waste of time.
Are you aware our class is like the highest dropout rate?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? High dropout rates.
That is completely and utterly
I think it
Pathetic.
points something out about either the kids or the system.
I believe it's the system.
I think it's
And
both.
What do you want to say about high dropout rate? So, question, now we're kind of notice at 3A, we can join text, can't we? We can take an observation made about some stupid bird that got stuck in a house. We can make an observation from the Updike poem about a cat that used to play basketball really well, but now all he does is work at a gas station. And we can ask some interesting kinds of questions about this topic of dropout rate. Why do you think the number one reason students drop out of high school? Jot it down. Come up with a single reason. What is for you the top reason, do you think, students drop out of high school? Now, they got to stay in high school until what age?
16.
Right? So they got they start at age 6, and by age 16, so they've been doing this thing called school for 10 years. 10. That's a long time to be doing anything, right? You agree with me? So they've been doing it for 10 years. With basically 100 days off every year for the summer holiday, right? And at age 16, they finally go, dude, I'm done. I've had enough of that. Why do you think they do that? What's the number one reason?
They don't feel like it's useful to them.
They don't see the value in this, in schooling.
Well, here,
They don't think ahead, meaning they don't see their future. They are unaware, is it that? Or they just don't care about being aware.
Probably unaware of how much it's going to affect them not finishing.
Not having an education when you live in a capitalist society makes it really hard to be able to feed yourself if you don't have money. Hard to get money without a job. Hard to get a job without an education. They're symbiotic. They go together. Your argument is nobody's told them that? 10 years of schooling and nobody's told them that? They know.
They're negligent.
So you're saying they know that they are going to suffer for this decision, and they do it anyway. Which begs a really then intriguing question: why would they do it anyway?
I wrote drugs down on my paper.
They're stoned.
Honestly.
They're stoned.
Yeah, a lot of them.
Yeah, they're stoned. So you're
You
saying
look at our class.
you're saying students that drop out because they're stoned?
Not all of them, just the ones that were
A lot of them.
The sophomore class.
And so, go ahead, Mr. Duvall. What do you want to say?
They're lazy.
Students who drop out
That's a side effect.
are lazy.
I think that's a side effect.
You're saying that whole thing of get up, go to school, do the homework, get up, go to school, do the homework, get up, go to school, do the homework. You're saying that people who refuse to do that are lazy.
I think it's partly their parents' fault.
Mr. Pacheco.
Well, it doesn't always have to be a negative reason.
Go ahead, Mr. Pacheco. Make a good argument for us.
For instance, like sometimes people have to drop out to get a job to support their families.
Right. Right. I have students who do not understand this concept. That their mom or their dad or whoever they're living with comes to them and says, we do not have enough money to eat. We need money so we can feed X number of other people we're responsible for. You're going to have to get a job. And the kid says, okay, I'll get a job. Drops out, goes gets a job. Brings home all of his check, hands it over to mom, dad, whoever, and says, all right, cash it and do with it what you got to. You're going to call that kid lazy. See, that just doesn't quite resonate as laziness, does it?
There's a value system of what's
A
important.
value system, a cultural value system, an economic value system. Keep going. I think this is a worthy question to ask. Why do you think it is the case so many students in the United States dropped out yesterday? A bunch, by the way. More than you'd imagine. Go online and look at the stats, the dropout rate. It's unbelievably high. Kids who just say, dude, I tried it for 10 years or more. I tried it. I gotta quit. I gotta get out. Come on, what are some other reasons?
Anxiety.
Anxiety about what? Because you're absolutely right. This is one of the highest reasons. Believe it or not, this is one of the #1 reasons kids drop out of school. They do not want to walk through those doors anymore. They will often say to counselors and therapists, I just can't do it anymore. But anxiety about what?
Scared of the other kids.
They don't want to be around the kids in the building. They don't want to be around the kids who maybe, for example, treat them really crappy. Maybe make fun of them. Maybe they come from homes where, for example, they can't afford the latest new shoes and the latest new clothes and the latest new figure, under whatever. And they've been picked on for all their life. 10 years of it, they've been brutalized, picked on, made fun of. When they finally get their ticket to ride, they're done, they get out. They would much rather work at Big Mac, where at least they're treated with some level of respect by a boss or somebody. Is that a legitimate reason to drop out? What do you have to say about that idea?
It's a real
The system.
It's a disorder. It's a pathology of sorts.
Anxiety's a real.
It's legitimate. Costello says you can't just tell some kid who really is anxious or full of anxiety about coming to school, get over it or don't worry. You can't do that. Is dropping out of high school the same thing as being 40 and quitting your job?
No,
Not the same thing. Why not? How's that different?
there's a difference between giving up new knowledge and giving up what helps you live.
Being in school is about gaining new knowledge, Mortensen says, and when you drop out, you kind of rob yourself of that opportunity of that new knowledge. What kinds of new knowledge? Just academic knowledge?
Knowledge to help you with your life.
Social knowledge?
I've been in school for 8 years and I still don't know how to do like taxes and everyday stuff that I'm really going to need to know when I'm old.
There's things still old, Irvin Trout says. Older. There's things we still got to learn before we go out into the big bad world
They don't
of
teach
the
you
reality
a lot
of
school either.
a lot of that. Some of that's taught at school, some of that's not taught at school. You have to find other
It's
ways.
like they'll they'll teach you how to figure out how tall a telephone pole is by its shadow, but they're not going to teach you how to do your taxes.
You're saying that education oftentimes
Needs a
is
new
seen as
value
not
system.
very practical. And so kids who drop out don't see any value anymore in learning the stuff that they're being taught. They feel kind of out of place.
Like, they never really, the people who drop out, I can see how they just don't feel like they're learning anything because
They
you
see
don't-
it as a waste of time.
Yeah, because if you plan on working at McDonald's, you don't really need to know how far away the sun is or something
And
like
it's
that.
not just McDonald's. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people in Wyoming, especially, are going to be ranch hands or farmers and don't need
Yeah.
to know all
Oil
that
company.
biology.
Yeah, that's true.
Fish Ruffle.
So, okay, we were in world history today, and we started talking about dropouts out of like college and stuff, and like Bill Gates and all
Yes.
those guys who are like millionaires, billionaires now,
Yes.
who dropped out
Right.
of college and stuff, and now they're like, you know, insanely rich. And stuff.
Right. What are your thoughts on that?
You can't
I
depend
don't know,
on
they're like,
That's
they're.
one
You have to have one of those talents. Though.
Yeah.
Those are special people.
Yeah.
Those are kind of special cases, we might say.
Well,
Mr.
like,
DeVault.
school is more of a broad thing, and like they could drop out to focus on a specific skill set.
What about the idea that if you've been in school, any school, for 10 years, that's long enough. 10 years ought to be long enough to teach you everything you need to know about living in the real world.
Isn't that the truth?
And by the age of 16, you ought to be ready to go out and live in the real world. Do you feel ready to go out and live in the real world, or do you kind of still feel like a kid?
In like
You
Germany,
graduated basically.
in Germany,
Which one?
if you're not smart enough, you're done with school and you have a job. At this
Many nations, not just Germany, we think of a number of nations where you're tracked basically, and at the age of 16, decisions are made. Either you're going to continue with your education to become a professional of some kind that requires more education, or you go into the workforce. It's done. Or, of course, you can always do some kind of military training and the like. A lot of countries have required military training. Everyone goes to school for an X number of years, and then everyone, male as well as female, will go and do military training for 2 or even 3 years. Everyone. And then after that, you get to decide what it is you're going to do. Go to college or whatever. What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Pacheco? Would you like that idea? Would that change things for dropouts if they knew the minute they drop out, they go to the military, or they can prolong it for 2 more years, and at the age of 18, 19, when they finally graduate from high school, they go to the military? It's amazing, in countries where you have required military training at 19, nobody drops out of school. Why is that, do you think?
They don't want to do it.
Right, right. They kind of don't want to jump too quickly into the world of military training. So they kind of wait. In the end, back to our sparrow. Is the sparrow more happy when he's free?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
Or is it fair to say about animals they are happy? Humans, we can say, are happy. But can a sparrow be happy?
I guess only the sparrow dog.
Dogs can be happy. How do you know?
They
They
like
like
their
their
tail.
In the same way that our sparrow seems to take off from his hands. Notice the word thrumming comes up twice. That beating, that desire to be free. Do you think all animals desire to be free?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where they. That's the.
No.
Well, okay, my dog is happy.
Okay, you can have a
Depends on if there's a loyalty
I
attachment.
think your dog is happy.
My dog lives to please.
Chill, but he still
So do all animals want to be free?
No.
Like that
No.
deep in their brain, they have that little.
If they're given freedom.
Domestic animals have somehow been broken of their desire for freedom.
If they're given a certain amount of freedom, they already feel as though
Are
they're free.
students kind of like domesticated animals?
Yes.
Yeah.
Some of them.
That in the end we've kind of lost our desire to be free? Is that why kids drop out? They want to be free?
Then they moved to California.
Move out away from school and the rhythms of school because they long for freedom? That makes all of you slaves.
Pretty much.
Self-chosen slavery.
The government chooses parents.
I'm only 15.
Wait a minute, you're 16, you can leave.
High five.
So those of you who are 16, are you choosing?
We agreed on something.
Are you choosing to stay
I
here?
don't want to disappoint my parents.
This is a big one. I don't want to disappoint my parents. My parents have said to me, you need money, stay in school, get a degree. What about the idea of going to college after high school? Are you a loser if you don't go to college?
Not necessarily.
No.
No. There are other options. Why then is it so many students who say, like one of my students once said, wait, let me get this straight. The one thing I hate the most in my life, school, is the one thing you're telling me I kind of need to do after I graduate if I want to get a good job? And I said, yeah, but here's the deal. At the next level, you get to pay for it. That book that you're looking at is about 200 bones. That's what you'll pay for it when you go away to college, or more. Yeah, you'll drop $1,000 a semester just on books. Just on books.
This makes some people feel like it's not worth it.
Right, Costella says, so why would I do that if I already hated school
Well, and if
anyway?
you don't have a college fund of anything whatsoever.
Right, how am I going to pay for it if I don't have parents who set aside money or whatever?
Applying to
Wonder if your
college.
mom's still.
Applying to college costs money. Some of us are sophomores already thinking that by next year as juniors, well, I have to already start thinking about these silly questions of what will I do after I graduate?
See all these people who are older who are still paying off their student loans at the age of like
You go into debt a lot of times when you go away to college.
retirement. They're
Very
still paying.
true. And yet, way over 80% of graduates this next year will start in college somewhere, some trade school, training school. Why come? Easily, 80. Yeah, easily. I mean, that's where most kids go. Some kind of education. I throw military into education as well, right? It's a form of education. Why do you think so many of us go on to college or education even though we hate it?
It's been like done.
Money. We want to make money. Don't the kids who drop out want to make money?
But they don't want to give it.
It's lower paid.
They might not understand the gain afterwards.
They don't understand the game or the game?
Gain.
Or both?
No.
Both.
Is it a game?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of a game. And you have to learn to play the game.
And I just lost the game.
Let me show you another example of 3B that we can use in this poem. I'm just kind of showing you ways to think through this literature. Watch this. Who in your life has ever freed you as the sparrow is freed here? Now think before you answer in your notes. This is a 3B question. Who in your life found you stuck in a situation from which you felt like there was absolutely no escape? We can obviously be speaking more metaphorically or figuratively than literally. And then has somehow found a way to help to let you go free. Who are those people in your life that have helped you in that way? That have somehow helped you find your passion, your joy? Might have been a teacher, might have been a coach, might have been a parent, might have been a pal, a friend, might have been a complete stranger. It might have been someone who showed you what it was like to be happy. And in that moment you felt, oh, might have been somebody older than you. Has anyone helped you be freed in this regards? Notice what this poem says, and this is fascinating. As happy as the sparrow is, and we can imagine that it probably is now, it seems or appears that the one who freed the sparrow is even more happy. He did something really cool. He caught the bird, took it outside, and let it go. So that leads to another question. In the last year, who have you freed? Using our poem as an understanding of the question. Who have you freed? It might have been the moment that you walked up to some new kid at school and introduced yourself and you were nice. And you knew it at the moment. You're like, I'm doing something really nice. When I simply say, welcome to our school. I'm really glad you're here. I hope you have a good first day of school since it's a new place. Because obviously a whole lot of other people would like look and make fun or whatever. Any outsider who comes into this building says it's really hard to come in here. because this is a very closed society. It's not a very open, welcoming society at all. Who have you helped? Who have you freed? Who have you spoken nice words to? Later, when you're a senior, we'll study Wordsworth's poem Tintern Abbey. He will call it this: little, nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and of love. That's what he calls it in Tintern Abbey. It's the little things that you've done that have allowed for somebody to feel free, relieved. Have you done that in the last year that you can identify? And in the moment of doing that, can you identify that it was kind of a really cool feeling as well? It's like, well, that's kind of neat. To speak in the most plebeian of language, I made someone's day, you know, right? Interesting. Look at Theodore Roethke's poem, the sloth. Well, we'll have to come back to the sloth tomorrow. Sorry, out of time.